Float fishing is one of the easiest and most enjoyable ways to start catching fish. In this video, I'll run through everything you need to get started, from choosing a swim, what gear you'll need, setting up your rig, and catching and landing your first fish. Let's get started. Float fishing is a style of fishing where your bait is suspended from the surface of the water with a float. Now this float acts as your bite indicator, and it will let you know when you've got a fish on the end of your line. When you first get to the venue, it's always worth taking just a couple of minutes just to have a look around. Look for signs of fish, such as ripples on the surface or bubbles coming up from the bottom. Also look for fish holding features, such as overhanging trees and lily pads. Let's run over the gear you'll need to start float fishing. Let's start with a rod and reel. You'll need a float rod between 10 and 12 foot long. 10-foot rods are more manageable, while 12-foot rods are better for casting longer distances. The rod I'm using today is a Corum Phase 1 11-foot float rod. As for the reel itself, you'll need between a 2 and 4,000 size reel. I'm using a 3,000 size. And as for the main line, breaking strains between 4 and 6 pound. 4 pound main line is ideal for most float fishing situations, but if you are hoping to target a couple of carp, I definitely step it up and use 6 pound. As for the tackle you need to set up your rig, you'll need a selection of floats. The smaller, lighter ones are ideal for close in, while the larger, heavier floats are ideal for fishing at distance. You'll need some float stops. These will hold your float to your line. Some float adapters. You don't have to use these, but if you do decide to change your float, it makes it a lot quicker and easier, and you don't have to retie your rig. Some other essential gear you need will be a landing net. You'll need this to land any fish that are too big to swing into hand. A disgorger. You'll need this to help unhook any deeply hooked fish. I'd also recommend an unhooking mat. This will help protect any larger fish while you're unhooking them. The float rig itself is quite simple. You start by threading one float stop up your main line, followed by the float adapter, and then 2 more float stops. You now insert the base of your float into the float adapter. Tie a loop in the end of your main line. I'm using a loop tie to make a small, neat loop. And attach your hook length via a loop-to-loop connection. If you'd like a more in-depth guide into tying this rig, please click the link in the description below. It's now time to set the depth of your float rig, and to do this, you're going to need a plummet. A plummet is a small weight with a loop at the top and either a soft piece of cork or rubber in the bottom, which you push your hook into. If you haven't got a plummet, you can get away with pinching a large split shot, such as an SSG, onto your hook. With your plummet attached, you now cast out into your swim. If your rig is set too shallow, the weight of the plummet will pull the float under the water. If your rig is set too deep, your float will rise up too high out of the water. To correctly set the depth, slide your float up and down your main line until just to the orange tip of the float is showing. Now your rig is set to the correct depth, it's time to apply some split shot to your line to set the float correctly. I recommend trying to use a smaller shot possible, such as 6s and 8s, and you want just enough shot so about 1 centimetre of the float tip is showing above the water. As for the shotting pattern, it depends on the style of fishing you want to do. If you're hoping to catch fish throughout the water column, I'd recommend spreading out your split shot evenly up your main line. Today, I'm targeting the larger fish that usually feed towards the bottom, so I'm using a bulk of shot 12 inches from the hook, with a number 8 dropper shot just above the hook length. This dropper shot will give an indication on the float should a fish pick up the bait and rise up in the water. Now that we're set up, it's time to get some bait in the water and start catching some fish. One bait you should never be without when float fishing is maggots. There's hardly a fish that swims that won't take a maggot. Whilst maggots are good at catching a variety of different species, you can be pestered with smaller fish. That's why I'll always bring a tin of sweet corn, something a bit larger, just to help filter out those better sized fish. To draw some fish into your peg, you're going to need to feed a few loose offerings. Feeding a dozen or so maggots every other cast should help keep fish in your peg. If you're fishing close in, you can throw these in by hand, but if fishing a bit further out, a catapult will definitely come in useful. It's also worth bringing some ground bait with you. This is ideal for attracting fish into your peg without overfeeding them. To mix up your ground bait, pour about 1/3 to half a bag into a ground bait bowl or a bait tub and slowly add water until it starts to bind. You want the ground bait so you can squeeze it into a ball, but you can still easily crumble it between your fingers. Now that we're ready to fish, let's put some bait on the hook. I'm fishing with a couple of maggots. And all you've got to do is just gently nick them through the skin. By nicking them just through the skin, this allows the maggots maximum movement, giving more traction to your hook bait. To cast out, you need to trap the line under your index finger, open the bail arm, point the rod in the direction you wish to cast, swing your rig back, and gently sweep the rod forwards, releasing the line roughly when the rod's up, straight up in the air. When you're float fishing, you'll typically experience 3 types of bites. The first one, where a float simply just pulls under. Second one, it's called a lift bite. This is when a fish picks at your bait and moves up in the water. And it's indicated by the float rising up. And the third one, you may see the float just slowly drifting across. If you notice your float is taking longer than expected to settle, that's probably because a fish has picked the bait up on the way down. So it's worth giving it a strike just to be sure. When you do get a bite, you need to strike to set the hook. You don't need to strike too hard, just a firm lift of the rod, just enough to set the hook. When it comes to smaller fish, a lot of the smaller ones, you can just swing into your hand. Anything bigger than the palm of your hand, I would recommend using a landing net. When you do hook a fish, don't be in too much of a hurry to bring it in. Just take your time, play the fish properly, and wait for it to come to the surface before you try to land it with a net. Many of the fish you'll catch while float fishing will be hooked in the lip, and is a simple case of grabbing the hook and gently taking it out. But sometimes that's not the case. This one's a bit more deeply hooked, so you're going to need a disgorger for this one. The disgorger has a little slot in it, which you hook onto your line, then gently feed the disgorger into the fish's mouth and dislodge the hook. When you do catch a fish care is always important. Make sure you put them back gently. One problem with float fishing is that even if there's just a little bit of wind, this can cause your float to be dragged across the surface, making your bait look unnatural. The easiest way to get around this is by sinking your line. To do this, you need to cast beyond where you're fishing, lower the rod tip under the water, a couple of quick turns, and this should help stop your float from drifting. If you're struggling for bites, sometimes it's worth scaling down a bit, changing to a smaller hook and a smaller hook bait, such as a single maggot. That should hopefully get the fish biting again. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, subscribe, and press the bell icon to be notified of future uploads.